Are we ready to call this meeting to order? Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to the July meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee of the Creeks Restoration and Water Quality Improvement Program. And I think we'll start with roll call.
Thank you. Ms. Heller,
Present.
Ms. Gaskin,
Present.
Ms. Owens, Ms. Murray, Mr. Klein,
Present.
Ms. Silva,
Present.
and Ms. Burdette. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from May 17th. And is there any discussion, or do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Can we have a roll call vote? Oh, just a voice vote. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions presumably from the new members? Okay, so we have unanimous with 2 abstentions. Are there any agenda adjustments?
No.
Is there any general public comment? Thank you. And now we're on to committee member and staff communications. Are there any committee member communications before we go to staff communications? Ms. Gaskin.
Thank you so much. I would simply like to call attention for the viewing audience as well as those present that a huge tribute was presented this past week to Creeks Division and to Cameron's leadership in the form of an article in The Independent written by Hugh Ransom, who is a phenomenal birder and has recognized the significance of the Royal Borough restoration area in terms of becoming a very important now breeding habitat for what is considered to be a pretty rare bird, the yellow-breasted chat. And that's a tribute. We don't often talk about restoration in terms of breeding activities. Certainly we talk about it in terms of bird activity, like Andre Clark or something like that, but breeding activity is pretty significant. And please extend kudos to your entire staff, Cameron, as well as recognition to you for just the incredible job you have done.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for that, Lori. That project really is not only a Creeks Division effort, a huge community effort. There's a long history behind that property, and what we've landed on, what we've ended up with is really something wonderful. And seeing that article really made my day. It was really exciting to see. So thanks to Hugh for writing that. Thanks to Libby for tracking the birds over at that open space. And it's really, it's really gratifying for all of us to see that kind of transformation. It really is, we're rewilding what was a really disturbed property down there, and it's incredible, and it turns out the wildlife is noticing.
Thank you so much for pointing that out, Lori. Any other committee member communications? I'll hand it over to staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the pleasure of introducing 2 new members who were appointed to our Creeks Advisory Committee just last month by the City Council. I'd like to invite them to introduce themselves and say a few words. We have Stephanie Murray and also Ann Burdette, and they're both very knowledgeable about Creek-related things and things that the Creeks Division has worked on. They've been engaged with the Creeks Division and even with the committee for some time now, and so we're thrilled to have them, and I want to welcome both of them, and I'd like to invite them to say a few words of introduction.
Hello, my name is Ann Burdette. I first got involved with the Creeks Division in 2016 when I helped map the dusky-footed wood rats, which they build nests in riparian areas, and they're a species of special concern. I helped map those nests when I was still in high school for the Arroyo Borough open space restoration when the site had just been acquired by the city. And that led to me becoming a board member of the Urban Creeks Council, which protects and restores the watersheds and tries to engage the community in protecting and restoring their watersheds. And as of last night, I'm actually the new president of the Santa Barbara Urban Creeks Council. And so I joined this committee because I just like to contribute to a future where more people in our community can engage with their creeks, and for those creeks to be healthy enough that they provide habitat as well as community like enjoyment, and for more people to be aware of their creeks.
Thank you so much. That's a great story. Stephanie?
Thank you. Anne was my student in conservation planning, and she's also been my student in rivers and in, I think, environmental sciences and honors, all sorts of classes. But she brought me into the Urban Creeks Council when she was working on the Palermo open space plan, and I was so intrigued, I went to check it out, and then she invited me on the Urban Creeks Council. I have a longer standing interest in Santa Barbara water because I, in high school, lived at Cachuma, and so I have spent my education pursuing a career in rivers and have been engaged at many different levels for agencies and nonprofit consulting and academia. And I'm so excited now to be here on the Citizens Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you both for deciding to join us. So I think if there are no other staff communications, that we'll move on to the business items for the evening. The first of which is a program update and plan report on water quality research and monitoring. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to hand the microphone over to Dr. Jill Murray, who's our Creeks Division Water Quality Research Analyst.
Thanks, Cameron, and thank you all for your time tonight. Before I jump in, I'm also going to thank Hugh, since he might see this someday. He was my daughter's 5th grade teacher, and he was exceptional, and you can tell he's a teacher in that article because he really explains how the entire process from facing some potential development to looking at options to who had to partner together to make the restoration happen and what specifically happened in that restoration that made the environment more suitable to the breeding of this rare bird. It's really, I think, easy to digest even for someone that's not from the Creeks Division. So thank you, Hugh. Okay, jumping on to the topic. Okay, I'm going to give a warning. This is going to be a pretty fast presentation that's going to gloss over a lot, but I definitely want to expose you to everything that we're working on right now, and I encourage the 2 new members to please feel free to reach out to me over email or phone if there's anything you want more clarification on. There's a lot of background to some of these topics, and other members of the committee have heard a lot more. So I'll start off by just going over our research plan that we're proposing, and then talk a little bit about some results from our FY23 sampling, and finish with our next steps. So our research and monitoring program has evolved over the entire time that I've been part of the Creeks Division, and it involves some what you might consider garden variety monitoring or long-term monitoring. Some of it's required, some of it's voluntary, but also we do a lot of just straight research projects that have more of a start and an end, and may involve some grant funding, may involve some partnerships with other scientists. And we update, or at least we review and possibly update the monitoring and research plan every year. Sometimes those are minor updates like this year, sometimes they're more major updates. And we're always seeking input from other city staff, other scientists, and really importantly, the advisory committee members on what they might want us to be looking at. And it can be, you might have very specific technical information, or you might just send me an article that you saw that might be interesting, and if we look into it, we might fold that into our research plan, and that has happened. So the purpose of the research plan is really the main purpose is to guide strategies and prioritization, but also we really want to be able to communicate with the public about what water quality is. We want to be able to look for changes over time, and that's one of the most common questions that we get. It's also one of the most difficult things to show. And then more recently, we started bringing in, trying to understand the role of climate change and sea level rise in altering creek conditions as kind of the main back purposes to what we're doing. Then specific goals, we're always assessing pollutants, so that involves figuring out which pollutants to study, which ones we should be worried about, which ones we test for and then realize that they're not really a problem. They might be there, but they're not at high enough concentrations, or the concentrations aren't known to cause a toxic response in creek organisms or a human health response, for example, in areas downstream. We're always evaluating Creeks Division projects and collecting baseline data for future projects. We want to implement hydrologic models so that we can understand alterations in flow over time due to climate change. We want to do more of evaluating the role of infiltration and groundwater movement, since that's such a big part of our management program. We want to evaluate the effectiveness of not just our projects, but our programs, for example, street sweeping. As I mentioned, looking at long-term trends, we often have monitoring requirements for grant-funded restoration or water quality improvement projects, so we make sure we're meeting those. And we also have some stormwater permit requirements that we have to conduct every year. That might be changing as we get our new permit next year or the year after. And we're always keeping track of our impaired water. So I'm going to get more into that jargon later, and always trying to keep aware of the most contemporary tools and try to figure out, you know, when have the tools advanced enough that we can justify spending money on it, when have they gotten affordable enough. Okay, so now I'll go through kind of, given that those are all of our objectives, we have 5 main focus areas this year. We can't do everything every year. Our required monitoring, as I mentioned, involves our general permit, and we have to every year test all of our flowing outfalls that are in priority areas. We have some assigned monitoring under the 303D list. I'll get more into that later. And then also our regional board has assigned us some work under what they call special studies. And again, that might change in a couple years. I don't know what's going to happen with the new permit. So for long-term monitoring, we do biweekly and quarterly sampling at several, at least one site on every creek, and either biweekly or quarterly. And then we also do our bioassessment monitoring, which you received a presentation on recently. And then we'll also do our project monitoring at the Bird Refuge, Arroyo Burrow Open Space, Barger, and our bioretention planters. A big focus for us this year and for 3 years really is to continue our microplastic pollution research. We did a small pilot study funded by Coastal Fund from UCSB, and that's completed, but then we used that data to leverage for a larger grant that I'll get into. But just as background, microplastics are defined by many groups, including the state of California, as plastics that are less than 5 millimeters in size for their greatest dimension. And we have done previous work. We know that street sweeping and our inlet screens keep out larger litter from the creeks. We have some quantitative data on that, but we really want to know if that can also help protect the creeks from microplastics, and we don't have any quantitative information on that yet. We know that we have quantitative information on what's being discharged. We have qualitative information showing we can find microplastics in the street sweeper debris, but we haven't related those to each other quantitatively. And I'm going to take the time to go into that grant in a little bit of detail, because last time I just whipped right through it. And that was when we had just received the announcement of that we were recommended for funding. And the money still hasn't been released at the national level, but I've been told that that's just politics and it's coming. The name of the grant is Clean Streets, Clean Seas, and Jennifer came up with that. I sent out an email to all of our staff saying, we need a good title. Titles matter, and she came up with that. It was funded by NOAA's National Sea Grant Program, and then the money actually goes through the USC Sea Grant Program, and then is dispersed. And this is a really extensive collaboration, and I have names of additional partners on the next couple of slides. The city is the principal investigator. USCC grant is taking the lead on the outreach and education, and we're working closely with Dr. Holden at UCSB. It's $1.2 million grant for contracted work. The city will not receive any of that grant money, but will receive all the benefits of the work being completed. And we will be matching with $50,000 of Measure B funding, and I think that helped get the grant. The relevance is nationwide, and we had to make that case when we applied for the grant. The money, we really said, this is using street sweeping or catch basin cleaning and catch basin inserts, these things that public works departments do all across the country, that really is our only chance to intercept microplastic once it's on the urban surfaces. And you know, I think there are 7,000 stormwater permits throughout the country, and they cover 80% of the population. So that if we have any chance at intercepting some of that material, we have to do so much more, you know, reduce the spread of it in the environment in the first place, but if we want to try to intercept it, this is really the main shot. And I just want to also say that there's a diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and accessibility plan, and so we will be trying to use that plan when we're hiring hourly employees, for example, when we're guiding our outreach, when we're bringing people on our advisory committees. I'm going to go over the 4 main objectives, and these are really separate contracts. First is to get that quantitative knowledge about whether street sweeping can actually reduce the load of microplastics. We'll be doing sampling, and UCSB will be doing the analyzing for that. And then we'll also be, that's more like real world. What are we actually doing right now with street sweeping? But what if we optimized everything, the driving speed, the pickup style? We're making simulated microplastic mixed with sediment, and then setting it out and testing street sweepers in a very controlled environment. And UCSB will be doing that with Cascade Water Resources. And then I also want to say that bigger picture, there's a real disagreement about how effective street sweeping is. And there are many stormwater permits in the larger communities where they get credit for street sweeping and reducing total loads of pollutants. Some people think they should be getting more credit. Some people think they shouldn't be getting any credit at all. I became aware of this as we were writing the grant application, so it's really interesting. And SCWRP, Southern California Coastal Water Research Project, has been developing a really detailed experiment to try to answer that question for other pollutants, metals and nutrients, for example. And so they have a rainfall simulator that they're building. They're going to test that on one side of the street being swept, one side being unswept. And so we added the microplastic to that study, and that's what our match is paying for. And then San Francisco Estuary Institute and the Moore Institute for Plastic Pollution Research, they are going to evaluate whether these trash capture devices that we throughout California are being encouraged to install as part of the state's trash amendment, encouraged if not required. There are some people that think that by trapping large trash in those inside catch basins and kind of leaving it there through multiple storms might actually produce microplastic. And so they'll be doing a study of that and seeing whether it can it filter out microplastic? Can it generate microplastic? So those are the 4 big research pushes. And then there are other objectives that I'll get into in years following, involving assimilating the results and creating meaningful outreach and engagement. This year, it's going to be a lot of paperwork, a lot of awarding contracts, convening our technical advisory group and outreach group, finalizing sampling plans, and then hopefully get to dry weather sampling this year. And storm sampling will happen in the following fiscal year. Okay, much shorter topic area is our 303D monitoring. As I mentioned, we are required to do some of that with our permit, our stormwater permit, but we also, but this is separate. And every 3 years, our regional board and all regional boards go through a review of all of the water bodies in their area and all the potential pollutants that they could be impaired for. These are all related to specific beneficial uses such as swimming or drinking water supply or habitat. And they come up with a new list. And the last version had a lot of new additions. Some of them were not reasonable. Some of them had like just a technical error. We were able to have some of those, we commented and had some of those removed right away because they just were not accurate. But there's a lot that we still want to know. They were listed under maybe 10 samples. We don't know if those were really justified. So we'll be doing a lot more sampling this year and feeding those results to the regional board. And we're in collaboration with them. They're going to approve our sampling plan. Okay, microbial source tracking. And for the 2 new members, this is just such a huge topic. But this in FY24, it's a huge topic. And we have an extensive history with it, but this, but we have a small contract with UCSB that we award every year, and we just continually, we think that in previous work we have identified, and the city has immediately fixed any actual wastewater, sewer, or sewer storm drain connections that we think we've taken care of all of those, but we continue to sample every year to just make sure there aren't any new problems. And I'm going to talk about some of the results from this year later in the presentation, but for the coming year, we will be sampling in storms in Mission Creek, Arroyo Burro, and Sycamore Creek, and we'll be, as I've told you before, the city, thanks to Natalie Tees, our newest code enforcement officer, we now have a lot more capacity to do our storm sampling for this. She came out of a molecular lab, and it's really wonderful. So we'll be doing for the first time, more storm sampling in all of our creeks and then getting those samples to UCSB. And then the last big focus area for this year, and we've had this on for a couple of years and we've made some incremental progress, is really, we really feel it's time to try to get more automated equipment on our creeks, more flow gauges, more water quality loggers, and setting up auto samplers so that we can more easily collect samples during storm events. And, but we're gonna kind of take half a step back because just in the last 6 months, we've become aware of Southern California Coastal Water Research Project, Monash University, Orange County. They're just coming out with all of these low-cost, open-source, 3D printer type devices that might be much more effective and efficient than some of the more expensive loggers that we have considered and that we've been testing. Okay, now moving on to just some highlights of some FY23 results. We had our beach swimmer risk study. This was, the reason for this study is that, and again, this is really just the tip of the iceberg on all of the beach water quality for our new members. We know from beach warnings, which are required by the state, or indicator bacteria sampling is required by the state, leads to beach warnings. That is supposed to convey something about the risk to swimmers. There's a lot of challenges to that information and it isn't necessarily accurate. So for 20 years, we've been working with Dr. Holden at UCSB on DNA-based research that suggests very low risk, but we've never done any kind of quantitative study where we've really looked at pathogens themselves. So this is the first time that we've done that. It was only in dry weather. It's performing what's called a quantitative microbial risk assessment. So you're measuring pathogens, relating those to modeled exposure doses and then dose response curves and coming up with a risk and then comparing that to the risk that the EPA says is reasonable for beach water quality objectives. So we did 5 beaches, 4 dates, human and gull markers from UCSB, and a suite of pathogens from AP Genomics. And again, our ability to filter on site made this possible and so much more affordable. And so for the good news, the results, qualitatively looking at the results, we say best professional judgment, no to low risk, well below any US EPA risk standards for recreational swimming. Our human waste marker was similar to previous results. The 5 different human viruses and Salmonella were almost entirely non-detect. There's one bacteria that's actually from Gull that is I'm learning more and more about, and countries are finding might be responsible for some of the illnesses that have been measured in epidemiology studies. It's very low risk, self-resolving, but it's new research. We did find that in almost all of our samples at what I am almost positive is far below levels that would cause any kind of substantial or regular illness rates. But UCSB will be completing the formal quantitative assessment. Relating to policy, there is language in some of the newer policy that could allow us to develop site-specific objectives. So as I've talked to you before, we get these, we might get listed on a beach bummer list. We don't think that has anything to do with actual risk to swimmers. We might be able to develop our own criteria. That would be years down the road, but this is the kind of information that we need to have to even think if that's reasonable. And the next steps could be, and it's not going to be the coming year, to do a similar study in wet weather. Laguna Channel is where we did our microbial source tracking in the past year. In dry weather, we have found really low concentrations of wastewater or human waste markers and chemicals that you would expect. We've been able to rule out a couple of different areas in the storm drain network. One area might have some problems, but we don't yet know the sources. And then we're just now evaluating our wet weather results. I can say that we don't have the exact concentrations yet, but I have enough information to know that the human waste marker was detected at higher levels than in dry weather. So we're really gonna have to think about how could we tease out sources going forward. And that's just a map showing that we're kind of looking at the storm drain network and where we have, I'm not gonna go into details though. Okay, last update is environmental DNA. This is really fun. This has been very recent. This is another topic where we've been waiting for the prices to come down and accessibility to go up. And the state is really, really excited about this and kind of pushing these techniques for more of the ecological assessment. We've used these techniques on the microbial side for a long time, but now we can pay $50 to go get a qPCR test for trout, and we can pay $100 to get a community sequencing for all macroinvertebrates. So just unbelievable amounts of data for low cost. We have our first set of results. The fish, the trout data made sense, or making sense of the bentho macroinvertebrate data, and we'll compare that to Ecology Consultants data that you saw him present a couple of months ago, and we'll see which is better, or do we use both side by side? We're not sure yet. Oh, sorry, I did just go through all that. And finishing up, our next steps are to just finish all of our required monitoring, finalize our sampling plans for the year, review pending data that we're waiting to come in, and get all of our contracts for all the work we're going to do this year going. And then you'll see me again in December. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Murray. That was really informative and thorough. Are there any questions from committee members? Ms. Gaskin.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. About several months ago, George Johnson made a presentation to Santa Barbara Audubon's Conservation Science Committee on the progress at Andre Clark. And there was a great deal of dialogue with him about the source of the nutrients flowing into Andre Clark. And we were surprised, and correct me if I'm wrong, to learn that the city, Creeks, doesn't do any sampling of inflow?
I would say that was probably a slight misunderstanding.
Okay.
Yeah. We have done stormwater. What's really hard is we have to measure not just the concentration, but the flow rate, because we would have to know the total load coming in. There might be a really small drainage with really high concentration, but that pales in comparison to kind of the typical runoff from 90% of the watershed, for example. So we did our best on trying to partition different sections of the drainage, and but I cannot recite those results, but we can email about that. And then, and we tested the nutrient concentrations in the inflow for a long time, but we have not done a thorough job of going upstream, trying to figure out how much is golf course versus urban runoff. We really haven't.
That's the issue for us.
Yeah, and so with direction, we can do more of that.
I'm just tossing that out there, that certainly was, given the investment that we have made to Andre Clark, it would be good to now know, okay, what is the status of what's coming in, and particularly from where we think the source might be, just to get a better sense. We should be seeing better water quality within the lake or basin, but yeah, we were just troubled by that. I just am throwing that out there.
Okay, I definitely think there were some misunderstandings, but that might be because I wasn't as effective in communicating with George as I should have. So I take note of that and we will fix it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from committee members? Sophia?
Excuse me. I did have a quick question. First of all, Dr. Murray, awesome presentation and really, really excited to see what comes out of the study. I saw there that you did have a portion about like diversity, equity, inclusion. Is that mainly in just hiring the staff, or are you guys looking at it in terms of inclusion and resourcing around different communities in Santa Barbara and maybe the way that they interact with microplastics and discharge, et cetera?
The goal is definitely to include that. Everything you just said, how exactly we do that, we haven't developed any specifics yet, and would love to have your input along the way.
Yeah, I'd be happy to email you some ideas as well. Thanks.
I know there's a strong commitment to engaging the community as we plan and acquire results to make sure that they're reaching everybody.
Awesome. Cool.
Okay.
That's great.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from committee members? Seeing none, thank you so much. That was really incredibly informative and important because this is the core work that this program exists to do. So we'll move on to our next business item, which is an update on the Education and Outreach Program by Ms. Smith. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Smith. I'm the Creeks Outreach Coordinator, and I'm just going to give you a quick update on our education and outreach programs. So our education and outreach is guided by the city's Stormwater Management Program, or SWIMP. It's guided by our public education plan and also our public awareness surveys, which I'll talk about a little bit more later on. We have a youth watershed education program. We continue to contract with Explore Ecology, and this year they reached 3,184 students. They provide free programming to schools within the city, in-class presentations, field trips, online presentations, on-campus Clean Earth Club events, and they attend school science nights. And the Creeks Division, we also provide presentations and field trips to restoration sites or volunteer opportunities upon request. So we have also reached, I think, around 200 students this past year, in addition to the students reached by Explore Ecology. We participate in many community events, and our largest one, of course, is Creek Week, coming up in September. It'll be the 23rd to the 30th this year. Popular recurring events, I have a few photos from last year. We had our tour of Barger Canyon, which Ms. Heller attended. We have our tour on the Land Shark, which is, that will be Saturday, September 30th this year. Hope some or all of you can make it. And then this past year, we also did a couple of new events. We had a series of informal coffee at the creek events. We picked up coffee and donuts and went to a few different locations and just chatted with community members. So this was one that we had at East Beach at Sycamore Creek. And then we did a craft night at the Crafters Library where we made ocean-inspired resin projects. So that was just some kind of new fun things that we tried out this past year. We have a planning meeting coming up next Tuesday at 2 p.m. if anyone would like to get involved in hosting an event, or if you have ideas, thoughts for events to host this coming year. And community members can visit sbcreekweek.com or follow along on Facebook at SB Creek Week to learn more.
Can we just point out that I believe Anne's in a picture in
Oh,
the
that's
last?
right, Anne was at the Coffee at the Creek.
Yes.
She sure was. So other community events that we have attended this past year included an open house at City Hall, the Community Environmental Council's Earth Day Festival, which returned to Alameda Park this year for the full 2-day event, Cottage Hospital's Earth Day Festival for all of their staff, and the Junior Guards Fiesta competition, which was just last week. We work with many volunteers throughout the year, and just a few this past year have included Kate School, Raytheon, Santa Barbara Newcomers Club, Laguna Blanca School, and folks join us for creek and beach cleanups, native planting efforts, and also invasive plant removal efforts. And Lee was at this one here at East Beach as well. And we also administer the California Coastal Commission's Adopt a Beach program at city beaches. And our current groups include Channel Keeper, Urban Creeks Council, Starbucks Coffee, the Cliff Drive Store, Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History Sea Center, and Umbra. So we are very appreciative to all of these volunteers throughout the year. We have a robust advertising campaign that we put on every year. Currently running is our Creeks to the Beach campaign, which was a TikTok-inspired campaign we produced with City TV in 2021. The ads run in English and Spanish on Cox Media channels, Univision, so hopefully you've seen them. And we also are running a lot of ads online display and also pre-roll to reach people who are streaming their television programming. So if they're watching on Amazon or other streaming outlets, we can also place ads on those services. And then we also have a coordinating radio campaign going on right now, and we run those in both English and Spanish on local radio stations. And I was going to play, we have it's just a 15-second ad just to give you a little taste.
Be the solution to water pollution and stop pollution at its source. From the people to the street, to the creeks, to the beach. From the people to the street, to the creeks, to the beach. From the people to the street, to the creeks, to the beach. We're all the solution to water pollution.
So the 15-second version we might use in a pre-roll situation for streaming. So when people have the short attention span, we want them to see the whole thing before they skip ads. But then we also had 30-second versions that are airing on TV and 60-second versions that we can use elsewhere online. Oops, there we go. Okay, so we also advertise on MTD buses. That is the only billboard available in Santa Barbara, so we definitely take advantage of the bus advertising. We run exterior ads during the summer months, so these are currently on the exteriors of the buses, and then the interior ads we run year-round, and we have a little more time for folks to sit there and look at the ads. So here we can take advantage of adding more information, making sure that it's bilingual. The exterior ads, 20 feet away for 20 seconds, so they have to be short and sweet. So, and I would point out we share that contract with the City of Goleta and with County Project Clean Water, as well as our Spanish language TV advertising. Those are shared contracts. So that those folks are contributing to that effort as well. Our online outreach, we send out a monthly email newsletter. I hope you're all signed up. If you're not, let me know. We also are able to put stories and information in the City News in Brief, which goes out every Monday to over 30,000 community members, city staff, local press. So that's a good outlet for us. We are also active on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Nextdoor, and TikTok. We utilize those as much as we can to share information about our programs and events. So on all of those, our handle is at SB Creeks. I hope you'll follow us wherever you're active. And then our website is sbcreeks.com. And as you probably know, the city just launched a new website right at the end of June of last year. So we're about a year in. And we are just constantly working on improving content. We've got it, almost all of our content is translated into Spanish as well. And we worked with City GIS staff to build an online watershed map that features our projects and the local creeks. So that's been really great to include. We have a certified business program that Jill mentioned. Natalie Tees, our code enforcement officer, this is her, doing an inspection. We have 277 businesses currently participating, and it's a really brief inspection for this voluntary program. And once a business is certified, they receive a certificate signed by the mayor, a sticker to put in their window, and then we promote them. We list them on our website, we add them to our newsletter, we run print ads, we share the information at community events and on our social media. And then those businesses are also able to participate in our business assistance program, where we will buy them equipment to help protect the creek and ocean water quality. So if they need a berm to protect their storm drains, or if they need a shop vac to then clean up water that they collect, we will purchase those items for those businesses. So a few things coming up. We are working with City TV, just getting started on producing some new television PSAs. We generally do that every other year, so it's time to work on some new ads. We are just kicking off our public awareness survey. That's something that we do every 5 years. So I'm working with the Education and Outreach Subcommittee to put a meeting together with our consultants, and we hope to get going with that very soon. And a really exciting thing for not just the Creeks Division, but the entire city, is we are about to launch, it's called SB Connect. It's a CRM, or Constituent Relationship Management app. And so the end of the month, we're anticipating launch, and this is just kind of what the interface will look like. So it has some kind of frequently visited links to city services, but here you'll be able to press requests and submit any number of reports of issues around the city, and then it will be routed to the correct staff person to take care of it, and you can set up an account to kind of monitor the things that you've reported. And so for the Creeks Division, creek-related concerns will include illegal dumping and litter in the creeks, pollution entering the storm drain system, broken storm drain screens, and of course, just many other common concerns and reports that the city receives. And if anyone would like to sign up to be notified once those are available in the app stores, you can visit santabarbaraca.gov/sbconnect and sign up there. And so that will be available on Apple and Google stores very soon. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions or comments from committee members?
No, that you're awesome, and this is really cool, and I think that this is like a really special program that we have, so thanks for everything you do.
Thank you.
I did have a question. I know it's an ongoing source of contention and controversy, but Fiesta is coming up. Cascarones are in play usually. What role, if any, are we playing in addressing that? Thank you.
Sure. So the Creeks Division, we have sent out some outreach. We did a press release last month, just after solstice, just reminding the community that confetti is litter. It's littering. So what we really do is encourage community members to choose cascarones that have paper confetti and not the mylar, the shiny plastic material. Cascarones that don't have foam and glitter, just more plastic material on the outsides. The city, I think Public Works also, is it Public Works, covers storm drains along the mercados and the parade routes so that those materials aren't entering the storm drains. And then Old Spanish Days Fiesta, the downtown organization, and city staff are all doing really intensive daily cleanup during the event. So we're doing as much as we can.
Any other comments or questions? That was great, Liz. Thank you so much. I'm proud to be a member of this committee. Do we have any other business or issues up? Okay, Cameron's nodding.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just during Liz's presentation, I got a text from Dr. Murray saying, oh, shoot, I forgot to get a vote from the committee. So we have for our first item, we're going to return to that if that's okay. And we have a staff recommendation. So what she was presenting to you is our proposed water quality research monitoring plan for fiscal year 2024. I'm trying to get to this slide. I'm almost there. And we have a staff recommendation for the committee to concur with our recommendation to implement the proposed research and monitoring plan for fiscal year 2024. So we would need a motion, a second, and a vote.
Very devious, because
please.
the discussion, it only says for discussion on the agenda, so yes, you blindsided us a bit here, but I think we can cope with the
sorry.
change. Would anybody like to make a motion to,
I'll make a motion.
any second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and second. Is this roll call or voice vote? Jennifer? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? I think it passes unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry for the confusion, everybody.
We live to tell the tale. And if there's no other business, I think we are adjourned. And thank you again to staff for all their hard work and to the committee members for being here tonight.